I'm Jeff, and this is my family's Sega Genesis, which I did kind of steal from my brother, but again, it was for the family. I'm part of the family, and now it's mine, and not his. But this isn't just the Sega Genesis. This is the Sega Genesis, the Sega CD attachment, and the Sega 32X. In full disclosure, we made our parents buy all of this stuff, and we played only Sonic CD on this thing, and I think Night Trap. And this, I don't think we even got the Sonic game, so we just barely used it. But beyond that, yeah, it's basically a trophy. It's kind of like a little head. I like it. It's also so gigantic that I can't put this in any cabinet. It's got to sit next to my television. But it's there, it sits proudly. And it has that place of honor on my floor covered in dust because this isn't just a fun gaming system that I have a lot of memories on. It's also a key part of how I learned to tell stories. And that's kind of the heart of this video series, Stop Watching Movies. It's not just to say, hey, look at all this amazing stuff that's going on around film outside of Hollywood. It's also to look at how actually do people start to develop in the modern age to understand stories and characters. The truth of the matter is, a person can go 15 years and their most beloved stories are going to be video games or comic books or a million other things. And we can go about this in a couple of different ways. The bad way is to look at any random video game and say, hey, it had a great character arc here. That's kind of like a movie. Let's appreciate that and ourselves because we make movies and movies are the best. And then end it there. Just say, hey, we could maybe do that in a movie and just keep going. Or we can take a more abstract look and we can ask, why did this appeal to the audience? And did it do so in a way that could be done in a screenplay, but because of the particulars of the format and the history, it was more defined by something else, something we don't usually consider. And that kind of lesson can be seen all over the place in not just video games, but these video games specifically. And when I say these video games, I'm talking about what video gamers call the 16-bit era. The importance of 16-bit gaming isn't just for how it became popular, how it got into everybody's homes. It's also an important time period in the evolution of video game narratives. And specifically, it's important in terms of how video games were forced to tell their stories. Machines like this are very good at certain things. They can make really vibrant colors. They can move really quickly with no latency, which again, for a gamer is really important. It allows to be very responsive when you're playing video games, all these wonderful things. What it's terrible at is human voices. You cannot really record dialogue and play it on a system like this. It has to do with just audio compressions and stuff that I don't understand because, Jesus Christ, I'm in a blurry video and hoping my dog's whining doesn't catch up on the microphone. Yes, Kyra, I love you. You're not even looking at me, but okay. Yes, all right. Because the audio was bad, they had two choices. They could tell their story entirely through text, and you see that in a lot of RPGs, or they could tell their story silently, which is another example of where Sonic reigned supreme. Sonic didn't speak, but he had to profess a certain character. Why? Plenty of video game characters had no personality and they were still immensely popular. I couldn't tell you what Mega Man's personality was even today. He was blue and he shot and he jumped and he would turn pink if I killed the right guy. That's Mega Man. Mario is a really nice guy. And that's kind of it. And also he's Italian, and as an Italian, that makes him better to me. So yeah, great. Sonic has an attitude. More than that, he has more of an attitude than Mario. And that's the key detail here. Sega came to the market after Mario. Nintendo came out with the Nintendo Entertainment System years before Sega came out with this Genesis. As a consequence, they needed to stand out from the crowd. And the way they did that was by giving Sonic a slight attitude. In essence, they were saying there are kids who like Mario, and then there are kids who like Sonic. And the kids who like Mario are just a year or two older. Again, that probably doesn't sound significant to adults, especially years, decades after these things have come out and there have been younger versions of the characters, older versions of the characters. but we're talking about the specific moment in the early 90s when these both were dominating the market and fighting against each other. Sonic expressed his personality entirely through his movements. A screenwriter could really look at just Sonic's idle animations and understand how much you can communicate about a character just by what Sonic would do when you didn't play him. He would tap his feet, he'd put his hands on his hips, he would look at the screen. Any one of those in a screenplay can tell you a lot about a character. Now, doing all of them is probably a little bit too much. But as I sort of said at the beginning, we're not just here to say, oh, they did that in a video game, and now can we do that in a movie? No. We're trying to look a little more abstractly at these things. Let's actually talk specifics here. What is the age range of this? This is Super Mario World for the SNES, essentially the direct competitor to Sonic the Hedgehog. It's aimed at about 5 and up. Okay, great. Well then, what was the age range of Sonic? Sonic was recommended for kids around 6 to 7 and up, which, okay, it's a kid. And in film demographics, we pretty much lump all of those together. But in video games, that's a huge difference. The ability of a video game player at age 5 versus age 7 is drastically different. Mario can appeal to those younger kids because it's a slower style of gameplay and it's a more welcoming and brighter environment. Not only that, because of that brighter environment, they can come up with games like Mario Kart, which is a game for 5-year-olds and sociopaths. I don't have an axe to grind. I swear I've won a Mario Kart game in my life. I did it once. Supposedly, I was by myself against the computer, and I shut the game off before. Anyway, moving on. The other thing to consider is that 5 and 6 is right around first grade age. 7-year-olds is more second grade. And if you look at studies of different social behaviors, second grade is when kids aren't just learning about the environment. They're starting to look at themselves in the context of older kids and also younger kids. Because imagine this, if you're in kindergarten, you don't have any concept of grades and social structures. In first grade, it's all, again, new and you're very young. There are a lot of online resources that writers should look at, especially if they're writing to kids and especially if they don't have kids of their own. You can still write children's programming if you don't have kids. But hopefully you have friends who have kids, you've studied kids programming, and then you're going the extra mile with series like this and the recommendations of series like this, which is to go outside of the medium. Look at the studies, look at behavioral development patterns of kids. When you get to second grade, there's a much greater awareness of the idea that there are younger kids. And there's therefore a desire to distance yourself from that first grade. A really juvenile version of this is you would have little children's songs, children's practices. Once you start to get into second grade, those start to get a little, kids' version of dirty. You start putting in random jokes because you think you're acting up because you don't want to be that first grader. It's the same thing with video games, and it's the same thing with children's media. There is a fine definition between the younger kids' material that's safe and the material that is almost explicitly older than that. Once again, in development studios, we would just lump it all together. For a lot of writers, they just go, well, you have teenagers, you have tweens, and barely anyone writes for tweens, and then you have anyone younger than tweens. It's all kids programming. But if you don't appreciate the nuances, if you don't understand why did Sonic work, why did Sonic have an appeal that Mario didn't, then you're not going to be able to really hone in on an actual audience. You're just going to have a, frankly, rather generic kids programming show. And it's not going to connect with those kids on an emotional level. Is there anything else we can take from Sonic? Oh, God, yeah. In fact, there's a lot more we can take, not just about Sonic and Mario, who we should get to, but this era of gaming in general. And for another video, I want to talk about how did these writers start to push against their own boundaries? Like I said, these systems couldn't do speech. They could do music. To this day, there are still people who make music in 8-bit, not even 16-bit, because they understand that it allows them to focus on the rhythm and the range of notes. And by the way, Michael Jackson, he did music for Sonic. He didn't finish it because, well, let's not figure out why. But anyway, he understood that that was a platform for creativity. Those constraints, those were opportunities. And towards the end of the 16-bit era in the sort of mid to late 90s, some of the greatest video game narratives ever were told. And they were so effective because they had about a decade of nonverbal storytelling or text-only storytelling under their belts. And they had crafted all of these specific mechanisms for telling a story in that specific medium. So I would hope that later on we can do a video about how do you specify your talents to a medium? How do you develop that? How do you take advantage of that? And, well, how did they do it? Because, look, Sonic and Knuckles is a great action game, but there are great operatic narratives too. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, I'm gonna go wipe this thing down because it's now all over my hands and I'm starting to have conniptions. I'm also going to go find all those SNES cartridges that I just threw over there because I think they're like $5,000 a pop on eBay at this point, or $5. It's one or the other. Anywho, signing off. Thank you for watching this. Bye-bye.